What if I told you that the secret to reversing aging isn't locked in some lab in Switzerland? It isn't a $200 serum, and it isn't a pill you take once a day and hope for the best. What if it's been sitting on Italian dinner tables for 3,000 years, and nobody bothered to tell you, because there's no money in a tomato? Most people are out here buying anti-aging creams made of chemicals they can't pronounce, while there are villages scattered across Italy where people are living past 100, walking up hills every single day. Sharp as a tack, skin still holding, heart still strong, eating food their great-great-grandmothers would recognize on sight. This isn't folklore. This isn't some wellness influencer's fantasy. Researchers have a name for these places. They call them blue zones because the people there live so far beyond the average lifespan that scientists got on planes and flew in just to figure out why. And what they found, again and again, traces back to the same thing. Food, real food, grown in real soil, prepared the way it's been prepared for generations. Today I'm walking you through 20 of those foods. 20 Italian staples that modern science is now confirming do something remarkable at the cellular level. They lower inflammation, they protect the brain, they support the skin from the inside out, and they keep the heart running strong decades past when it's supposed to start failing. Stay with me, because number 11 is a fish, so small most people think it's a garnish, and it turns out it's doing more for your brain than half the supplements on the market. And number 20 is something the ancient Romans called a gift from the gods, and modern cardiologists, very carefully, are starting to agree with them. If this is the kind of content you want delivered to you every single week, hit that subscribe button right now before we get going. All right, let's get into it. 20 Italian superfoods that science says can meaningfully slow and in some ways reverse the markers of aging, counted down from solid to absolutely essential. Number 1, extra virgin olive oil, the liquid at the center of everything. I have to start here, and not just because it's number 1 on the list, but because if you understand olive oil, you understand the entire Italian relationship with food. In southern Italy, an olive tree isn't a crop. It's a family member. There are trees standing in Puglia and in Sicily right now that were already old when the Roman Empire was still standing. And the oil pressed from those olives, cold, unfiltered, green like a fresh-cut leaf, is not the same product sitting in most plastic bottles at your grocery store. Here's what the research actually shows. Extra virgin olive oil might be the single most studied food in the history of nutritional science. The Mediterranean diet, which is built around olive oil as its foundation, has been connected in study after study to lower rates of heart disease, lower rates of certain cancers, less cognitive decline, and lower all-cause mortality, meaning people who eat it regularly simply live longer on average. The compound doing a lot of the heavy lifting is called oleocanthal and behaves almost exactly like ibuprofen in the body, calming inflammatory pathways. But unlike a pill, you're getting it packaged with vitamin E, with the antioxidant squalene, and with a whole web of protective plant compounds working together. What makes it specifically anti-aging is what happens at the cellular level. It reduces oxidative stress, which is a process that damages your DNA over time, ages your skin, stiffens your arteries, and fogs your thinking. Populations eating the most high-quality olive oil consistently show slower aging on measurable biomarkers, things researchers can actually test for. Traditionally, it's used generously, poured raw over vegetables, over bread, over beans, because raw preserves a polyphenol that heat can break down, used as the main cooking fat. Taken straight off a spoon by older Italians like a daily tonic, which sounds old-fashioned until you realize it might be one of the smartest health habits a person can have. But here's the catch. Oil that's been sitting on a shelf for a year is not doing the same job as oil pressed last season. Freshness and quality are not optional details here. They're the entire point. Number 2, San Marzano tomatoes. Nature's answer to sunscreen and your arteries at once. Tomatoes didn't even exist in Italy until the 16th century when they arrived from the Americas. And within 100 years, Italian cooks had already figured out something it took scientists until the 1990s to formally prove. Cooking a tomato makes it more powerful, not less. Fresh tomatoes are loaded with lycopene, the carotenoid that gives them their deep red color, and happens to be one of the most effective free radical fighters found in any food on Earth. But here's the part that surprises people. Cooking tomatoes in olive oil dramatically increases how much lycopene your body can actually absorb. The heat breaks down the plant cell walls, and the fat from the oil carries that fat-soluble lycopene straight into your bloodstream. A tomato sauce simmered low and slow in olive oil for hours is delivering usable lycopene at levels a raw tomato simply cannot match. Studies have linked higher lycopene intake to meaningfully reduce prostate cancer risk, lower cardiovascular disease rates, and measurable protection against sun damage to skin. which is why people sometimes call tomatoes edible sunscreen, because in a documented, research way, they actually help. The skin of the tomato carries naringenin, a flavonoid that early research suggests may help lower inflammation and support healthy insulin response. Traditionally, this looks like slow, simmered sauces, whole tomatoes roasted in oil, and sun-dried tomatoes that concentrate the nutrition for the months when fresh ones aren't in season. The Italian grandmother making that sauce wasn't thinking about lycopene bioavailability. She was just feeding her family what worked. It just happened to also be one of the most thoroughly researched anti-aging foods we know of. Number 3. Garlic, the bulb that powered an empire. When Roman soldiers marched across the continent, they carried 3 things: a sword, a ration of grain, and garlic, not for the taste, for function. Ancient physicians prescribed it for infected wounds, for respiratory illness, for fatigue. Pliny the Elder wrote down more than 60 medicinal uses for it, and modern biochemistry has gone back and confirmed nearly all of them. The compound responsible is called allicin, and it's released the moment a clove is crushed or chopped. It's one of the broadest spectrum natural antimicrobials ever studied. But the anti-aging piece runs deeper than fighting infection. Clinical research has shown that regular garlic intake can lower blood pressure, reduce LDL cholesterol, reduce unwanted blood clotting, and support liver function. Every single one of those mechanisms directly counters the things that age the cardiovascular system fastest. Raw, freshly crushed garlic carries the most potency because allicin breaks down with heat, which is exactly why traditional Italian cooks treat it differently depending on what they need from it. Crushed raw into a dressing for full medicinal strength. Lightly sautéed at the start of the sauce when a gentler effect is what's wanted. The sulfur compounds in garlic also switch on detoxification enzymes in the liver, the ones responsible for clearing out environmental toxins that accelerate cellular aging. And in a world full of plastics, pesticides, and industrial pollution, that detox function matters arguably more today than it did when Roman soldiers were eating it by the clove on a battlefield. Number 4. Sardines, the small fish doing the job of an entire supplement aisle. Sardines are named after the island of Sardinia, one of the most famous blue zones on Earth, where an unusually high number of people live past 100. That is not a coincidence. These small, oily fish are some of the most nutrient-dense food on the planet, packed with omega-3 fatty acids, calcium, selenium, vitamin D, and B12 in amounts that make most supplement bottles look almost lazy by comparison. The omega-3s in sardines, specifically EPA and DHA, are literal building blocks for the membranes of your brain cells. DHA alone makes up somewhere around 15 to 20% of your cerebral cortex by dry weight. If you're not getting enough of it, your brain simply has fewer raw materials to repair and maintain itself with. The research connecting omega-3 intake to slower cognitive aging is some of the most consistent in all of nutrition science. Populations that regularly eat fatty fish show measurably slower cognitive decline, lower rates of depression, and significantly reduced cardiovascular risk. Sardines also deliver calcium in amounts that rival dairy, which matters enormously for bone density as we age, especially since you eat the small bones along with the flesh. Getting calcium in a ratio your body is actually built to absorb. Their selenium content supports thyroid function and acts as its own antioxidant, slowing cellular aging from another angle entirely. Traditionally on the Italian coast, the preparation is simple: grilled fresh, packed in good olive oil, or marinated with lemon. No batter, no deep frying in seed oil that would destroy the very omega-3s you're trying to get. The less done to them, the more they're able to do for you. Number 5. Red grapes. The compound at the center are one of the strangest findings in longevity science. The grapevine has always held a kind of reverence in Italian culture, going back even before the Romans wrapped it in religious meaning, and modern longevity research has found that reverence may have had real biology behind it all along. Red grapes, especially the thick-skinned varieties grown across Tuscany, Piedmont, and Sicily, contain resveratrol, one of the most studied anti-aging compounds in existence. Resveratrol activates a class of proteins called sirtuins, which regulate cellular repair, DNA protection, and a lot of the biological machinery tied to longevity. In lab research, it appears to mimic some of the metabolic effects of caloric restriction, which remains one of the most reliable life-extending interventions ever tested in animal studies, minus the part where you actually have to eat less. The skin and seeds of red grapes are also dense with anthocyanins and proanthocyanidins, polyphenols shown to reduce LDL oxidation, support the arterial walls, and calm the kind of chronic low-grade inflammation that sits underneath most age-related disease. Eating the whole grape, skin included, gives you the full range of these compounds, along with fiber, potassium, vitamin C, and vitamin K. The old Italian rhythm of eating fresh grapes through harvest season and then shifting to raisins through the winter wasn't a conscious health strategy. It was just how the seasons worked. But it ended up functioning as a kind of year-round antioxidant maintenance plan, whether anyone meant it that way or not. Number 6. Parmigiano Reggiano. The aged cheese doing more for your bones than you'd expect. Here's something that tends to surprise people. Properly aged Parmigiano Reggiano, the real thing, with its DOP certification and a minimum of 12 months of aging, is genuinely one of the most easily absorbed protein sources in the entire human food supply. The long fermentation and aging process slowly breaks down the casein proteins into free amino acids through natural enzymatic activity. What comes out the other end is a cheese that's remarkably easy to digest, easy enough that Italian pediatricians have historically recommended it for both infants and elderly people with sensitive digestion. It's also why a lot of people who react badly to most dairy can eat aged Parmesan without any trouble at all. The calcium content is excellent, and more importantly, it's highly bioavailable, meaning your body can actually use it. A single ounce delivers somewhere around 330 milligrams of calcium in a form your gut absorbs efficiently. For an aging body that's steadily losing bone density, that matters more than people realize. The phosphorus in Parmesan works alongside that calcium to help maintain bone mineral density, and the beneficial bacterial activity from fermentation continues to support gut health even after the cheese has finished aging. The Italian habit of finishing a meal with a few shavings of aged Parmesan isn't just about flavor. It's protein for muscle maintenance, calcium for the skeleton, and a small dose of probiotics for the gut. 3 jobs done in one small bite. Number 7. Basil, the herb planted on graves that turned out to be medicine. In ancient Greek and Roman tradition, basil was planted on graves as a symbol of eternal life. In Italian kitchens today, it's planted on windowsills to be eaten fresh. That shift from sacred symbol to daily food turns out to have been a genuinely good trade. Fresh basil is rich in vitamin K, which is essential for blood clotting and bone metabolism, along with beta-carotene, manganese, and a set of volatile oils, including linalool and eugenol, both of which have documented anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial activity. Research has shown basil extracts can inhibit the enzymes that drive inflammatory pathways in the body, lowering the kind of background inflammation that's now understood to be one of the primary engines behind accelerated aging. The flavonoids orientin and vicinine found in fresh basil have been shown in lab studies to protect cell structures from radiation exposure and oxidative stress. And in some cellular models, they appear to extend the functional lifespan of certain cell types by reducing DNA damage from free radicals. Traditionally, it's used fresh, torn by hand and scattered over food right at the end of cooking, never exposed to sustained heat, which destroys the very volatile compounds that make it useful in the first place. Basil pesto works as a concentrated way to deliver those oils and antioxidants all at once. It might be one of the simplest anti-inflammatory things a person can do with a plant growing on their windowsill. Number 8. Cannellini beans, the single most reliable food in every longevity study ever run. Here's one of the most consistent findings across the entire field of longevity research, across every population studied, every culture, every continent. The strongest dietary predictor of healthy aging is a superfood, and it isn't a supplement. It's legumes, beans, cannellini beans specifically. The creamy white beans that anchor Tuscan soups and stews are a perfect example of why. They're high in plant protein, high in soluble fiber, and rich in magnesium, potassium, folate, and iron. Despite their carbohydrate content, their glycemic index is remarkably low, which means sustained energy without the blood sugar spikes that, over time, accelerate aging throughout the body. The soluble fiber feeds the beneficial bacteria living in your colon, and those bacteria produce short-chain fatty acids that lower inflammation, not just locally, but throughout the body, including in the brain. Population studies consistently connect high legume consumption to lower rates of cardiovascular disease, lower colorectal cancer rates, and slower cognitive decline. Traditional Italian preparation always involves soaking the beans and cooking them low and slow with herbs, and that's not only for flavor. Soaking reduces compounds called anti-nutrients that otherwise interfere with mineral absorption, meaning everything inside that bean becomes more available to your body once it's prepared this way. Number 9. Figs, the ancient symbol of abundance that doubles as a gut healer. The fig tree is one of the oldest cultivated plants anywhere in the Mediterranean. In ancient Rome, it was considered sacred, a symbol of abundance and the generosity of the land. Modern nutrition has gone back and confirmed that the reverence was earned. Figs are unusually rich in antioxidants, including chlorogenic acids and anthocyanins, both of which neutralize free radicals and slow oxidative damage to skin and tissue. They provide potassium, calcium, magnesium, and copper in amounts that support heart function, bone health, and collagen production. The soluble fiber in figs, mostly in the form of pectin, acts as a powerful prebiotic, feeding the beneficial bacteria in your gut, and that connection has been tied to better immune function, healthier skin, and even mental clarity. The traditional Italian habit of eating figs fresh through the summer and then dried through winter wasn't a deliberate health strategy. It was just how the fruit worked with the seasons, but it ended up functioning as smart, instinctive nutritional planning year-round. The milky latex inside a fresh fig also contains an enzyme called phycin, which breaks down proteins and has been used topically for centuries on irritated or damaged skin, a folk practice that modern wound care research is now starting to take a closer look at. Number 10. Artichokes. The vegetable doing quiet work on your liver. This is the one that tends to catch people off guard. The artichoke, thorny, a little labor-intensive to even eat, turns out to be one of the highest antioxidant vegetables ever measured, with an antioxidant capacity that rivals blueberries. And its specific compound profile targets something most anti-aging conversations completely skip over, which is liver health. Artichokes contain cynarin and silymarin, compounds that stimulate bile production, protect liver cells from oxidative stress, and support the pathways your liver uses to detoxify and clear out waste. A liver functioning well as clearing metabolic waste that would otherwise build up and drive chronic inflammation throughout the rest of the body. Clinical research on artichoke leaf extract has shown it can lower LDL cholesterol, improve overall cholesterol ratios, and reduce markers of liver stress. It also has well-documented prebiotic effects. The inulin fiber in artichokes feeds beneficial gut bacteria, compounding its anti-inflammatory benefit over time in a second, separate way. Traditionally in Italy, they're roasted whole, braised in olive oil and white wine, or eaten raw when picked young enough. The effort it takes to eat one, pulling the leaves apart one at a time, is almost a built-in signal that this is food meant to be eaten slowly, with attention, not rushed through. Number 11. Anchovies. The tiny fish doing more for your brain than people give it credit for. In the fish markets of Naples and along the Ligurian coast, anchovies aren't a pizza topping people pick off. They're a staple, a foundational protein, the base of sauces, the depth in a dressing, the umami backbone of a dozen classic dishes. And by any nutritional measure, they're remarkable. Anchovies are among the richest sources of omega-3 fatty acids you can find anywhere. Because they're small, short-lived fish near the bottom of the food chain, they accumulate almost no heavy metals, while still concentrating EPA and DHA at levels that rival salmon. Their selenium content is notable too. Selenium is an essential mineral your body uses to produce glutathione, which functions as the body's master internal antioxidant, and it's also critical for thyroid function and DNA repair. The protein in anchovies is complete and highly bioavailable, and in an aging body, maintaining muscle mass isn't just about eating enough protein. It's about eating protein your body can actually absorb and put to use, and anchovy protein fits that requirement well. Traditionally, they're salt-cured whole and melted into warm olive oil at the very start of cooking, which infuses an entire dish with both nutrients and flavor at once. Anchovy paste gets worked into dressings the same way. The grandmother's trick for making food taste deeper and richer was, without her ever framing it this way, also a trick for getting more omega-3s into her family's bloodstream. Number 12. Oregano, the wild herb growing on hillsides that pharmaceutical researchers are now studying closely. Oregano grows wild across the hillsides of Calabria, Sicily, and the Amalfi Coast, carpeting the landscape, and it turns out the plants covering those slopes are doing something researchers in white coats are paying very close attention to. Oregano contains carvacrol and thymol, two of the most potent natural antimicrobial compounds identified in plant science. Studies have confirmed carvacrol's ability to inhibit a range of bacterial pathogens, and thymol's antifungal activity is strong enough that it's used in some clinical dental applications today. But the anti-aging angle on oregano comes down to its antioxidant density. Dried oregano has one of the highest antioxidant concentrations of any herb or spice ever measured, gram for gram outperforming a long list of fruits and vegetables most people assume are more powerful. Regular consumption appears to dampen the kind of inflammatory signaling that underlies joint degradation, arterial stiffening, and cellular aging more broadly. In traditional Italian cooking, it was used liberally and often, not sprinkled on as a garnish at the end, but folded in as something closer to medicine disguised as flavor. Number 13. Arugula, the peppery green, quietly improving your circulation. Arugula shows up so casually in Italian markets and home gardens that most people walk right past it without realizing they're looking at one of the most cardiovascularly active vegetables in the entire Mediterranean diet. Arugula is one of the richest dietary sources of natural nitrates, compounds your body converts into nitric oxide, a molecule that relaxes and widens blood vessels, improves circulation, helps regulate blood pressure, and increases how much oxygen and nutrients actually reach your organs. This is the same mechanism that made beets famous in athletic performance research. But arugula delivers it alongside vitamin K, calcium, vitamin C, and a range of antioxidant compounds called glucosinolates. Those glucosinolates, which are responsible for arugula's peppery bite, get converted by the body into isothiocyanates and indoles, compounds with documented anti-cancer activity that also help activate the liver's detoxification enzymes. Populations with high intake of cruciferous greens, the family arugula belongs to, consistently show lower rates of several cancers. The simple Italian arugula salad, raw, dressed with nothing more than good olive oil and a pinch of salt, is almost a masterclass in preserving these heat-sensitive compounds. It's a food that rewards doing as little to it as possible. Number 14. Eggplant, the vegetable that was once feared and turns out to protect the brain. Eggplant, known in Italian as melanzana, arrived from the Middle East during the medieval period and was initially treated with suspicion. Its deep purple skin considered strange, even dangerous. Italian cooks eventually figured out what that color actually was. Nasonenin. Nasonenin is an anthocyanin antioxidant found almost exclusively in eggplant skin and has been studied specifically for its ability to protect the membranes of brain cells from free radical damage. It binds to excess iron in the body, the kind of iron that would otherwise generate the free radicals known to degrade neurons over time, and in doing so it helps protect the fatty structures that make up the walls of brain cells. Beyond nasonenin, eggplant contains chlorogenic acid, one of the more potent antioxidants found in any plant food, with documented anti-inflammatory effects and the ability to limit LDL oxidation. Traditional Italian preparation, roasted whole, grilled, or slow-cooked into tomato sauce, preserves these compounds well, and the skin should always be left on. Melanzane alla parmigiana, one of the most beloved dishes in southern Italian cooking, ends up delivering nasonenin, lycopene from the tomatoes, and olive oil polyphenol all in a single dish. Number 15. Lemons, the fruit holding up collagen production along the Amalfi Coast. On the terrace hillsides of the Amalfi Coast, lemon trees grow directly on cliffs above the sea. Their fruit often the size of a fist, their skin thick and fragrant, their juice far more intense than what most commercial lemons offer. These are the lemons Italian grandmothers squeeze on in nearly everything: fish, vegetables, meat, beans, and the reason is both culinary and biochemical. Vitamin C is the rate-limiting factor in collagen synthesis, meaning your body cannot build the collagen that keeps skin firm, joints functional, and arterial walls structurally sound without a steady supply of it, and cannot store vitamin C for later. It has to come in fresh, every single day. Italian lemons deliver it generously, alongside flavonoids like asparagine and areocitrin, which extend its antioxidant activity and help the body absorb it more effectively. The zest carries limonene, a compound with documented anti-cancer properties, and the ability to support the liver's detoxification pathways. Traditional Italian cooking uses a whole lemon, juice in dressings and marinades, zest worked into sauces and pastas, preserved lemon used in condiments, which happens to be exactly the right approach for capturing its full range of benefits. Vitamin C also directly neutralizes free radicals in skin tissue, helps protect against UV-related oxidative damage, and supports the adrenal glands under stress, another quiet accelerant of biological aging. A daily dose of fresh lemon isn't a wellness trend. It's a centuries-old Italian habit that modern biochemistry happens to fully support. Number 16. Naturally fermented olives. The original probiotic, long before supplements existed. The olive itself, not just the oil pressed from it, has sustained Italian communities for thousands of years, and naturally fermented olives, cured the traditional way in a salt brine rather than the fast industrial light curing process used in most mass production today, are essentially a different food entirely from what fills most supermarket jars. Traditionally fermented olives go through a lactofermentation process, similar to what happens with sauerkraut or kimchi. What comes out is a probiotic food rich in lactobacillus cultures that support gut health, strengthen immune function, and produce short-chain fatty acids that reduce inflammation throughout the body. The healthy monounsaturated fat in olives is the same oleic acid that makes olive oil so beneficial, just delivered here inside a whole food matrix alongside polyphenol, including hydroxytyrosol, considered one of the most potent antioxidants found in any food. Research on hydroxytyrosol has shown it can protect cells from oxidative stress, support mitochondrial function, which is a cellular energy production that naturally declines as we age, and lower inflammatory markers, including CRP, in populations that regularly eat traditionally fermented olives. Industrial curing tends to wipe out the probiotic activity, along with much of the polyphenol content. So seeking out genuinely brined, traditionally produced olives makes a real and measurable difference. Number 17. Wild mushrooms. The forest foraging tradition that protects the brain better than most supplements. Every autumn across the Apennine Mountains, through the forests of Tuscany, Umbria, and Friuli, Italians head out with wicker baskets to forage for porcini, chanterelles, and other wild mushrooms. It isn't a hobby. It's a tradition as old as the culture itself. And it turns out those forests have been doing quiet pharmaceutical work all along. Wild mushrooms, distinct from most cultivated varieties, are among the richest known dietary sources of ergothioneine, a unique antioxidant amino acid that the human body has a dedicated transport protein for, meaning we are specifically built to absorb and use it. Ergothioneine concentrates in tissues with the highest metabolic demand, the brain, liver, kidneys, and bone marrow, and protects them from oxidative damage. Some researchers studying it have started calling it a longevity vitamin. Populations with higher ergothioneine levels tend to show lower rates of cognitive decline, lower cardiovascular disease, and lower mortality overall. Wild mushrooms also provide beta-glucans, immune-modulating compounds that activate natural killer cells and support the kind of immune surveillance that naturally weakens with age. Their vitamin D content, boosted by sun exposure as they grow, supports bone density, immune function, and mood, and their fiber feeds the gut bacteria responsible for regulating inflammation throughout the body. Traditionally, they're dried slowly and reconstituted into pasta sauces, or braised with olive oil and garlic as a side dish. The porcini risotto that feels like pure indulgence is, nutritionally speaking, one of the more anti-aging meals you'll find anywhere in the Mediterranean canon. Number 18. Sicilian pistachios. The nut feeding your eyes, your gut, and your heart all at once. Pistachios from Bronte in Sicily, small, intensely green, with a flavor far more concentrated than what most commercial pistachios offer, are considered among the finest in the world, and the research backs up why they've always carried that reputation. Pistachios are unusually high in lutein and zeaxanthin, carotenoids that accumulate directly in the macula of the eye and help protect against age-related macular degeneration, which remains the leading cause of vision loss in people over 60. They carry more potassium than most other nuts, supporting the blood pressure regulation that becomes increasingly important as we age, and their protein profile is unusually complete for a plant food, with a strong ratio of essential amino acids. What makes pistachios especially interesting in longevity research is their effect on the gut microbiome. Studies have shown regular pistachio consumption significantly increases bifidobacterium populations, among the most beneficial bacteria your gut can host, more so than most other nuts tested. That prebiotic fiber effect is part of why pistachio consumption has been linked in clinical research to improvements in blood sugar control, lipid profiles, and inflammatory markers. Their cell wall structure also means the portion of their fat passes through the gut without being absorbed at all, feeding bacteria instead of being stored, which makes them more satiating per calorie than the label alone would suggest. Number 19. Bitter chicory greens. The vegetable older Italians never stopped eating, and for good reason. The older the Italian, the more likely you are to find them eating bitter greens. Radicchio, chicory, puntarelle. These aren't acquired tastes people learn to tolerate. They're traditional medicine wearing the disguise of dinner, eaten for generations by people who understood, without needing a study to tell them, that bitter usually meant beneficial. Chicory greens are one of the richest dietary sources of inulin, a prebiotic fiber that feeds bifidobacterium and lactobacillus species in the colon, with an efficiency most supplements can't come close to matching. A healthy population of those bacteria produces butyrate and other short-chain fatty acids that heal the gut lining, lower systemic inflammation, regulate immune function, and even produce neurotransmitters that directly influence mood and cognitive function. Chicory also contains chicory acid, an antioxidant with documented anti-inflammatory and antiviral properties, along with a class of bitter compounds called sesquiterpene lactones, which support liver function and bioproduction, improving how efficiently the body processes and clears out toxins. The very compounds responsible for chicory's bitterness are the same ones doing the work. Traditionally, it's blanched and braised in olive oil and garlic, or eaten raw in salads mixed with sweeter greens to soften the bite. The Italian habit of eating something bitter at the start of or alongside a meal stimulates digestive enzyme production, improves nutrient absorption, and keeps the gut ecosystem functioning the way it evolved to function. The people who skipped bitter greens ended up needing supplements later. The people who kept eating them mostly didn't. Number 20. Red wine, the most carefully handled item on this entire list. And here we are at number 20, the one that requires the most careful framing, and honestly, the one that tells you the most about how culture and context shape whether something helps you or hurts you. Let me be very clear about something before we go further. This is not a suggestion to drink more alcohol, and if you don't currently drink, none of this is a reason to start. What this is an honest look at why, in a very specific context, traditional Italian red wine, consumed the traditional Italian way, keeps showing up in longevity research again and again. Red wine made from traditional Italian varietals, Sangiovese, Nebbiolo, Montepulciano, is dense with resveratrol and proanthocyanidins from the grape skins, along with quercetin, and a range of other polyphenol that cardiovascular researchers have studied extensively over the past few decades. What's sometimes called the Italian paradox, lower rates of heart disease in populations eating rich, traditional diets, has been partly attributed to moderate, regular consumption of polyphenol-rich red wine, taken with food, not on its own. Controlled studies have associated moderate intake with improved HDL cholesterol, reduced unwanted platelet aggregation, and lower inflammatory markers. Some research has even connected those polyphenol to greater gut microbiome diversity, which is associated with better metabolic health and slower aging more broadly. But the operative word in all of this is moderation. One small glass with a meal, taken slowly, alongside other people, inside a culture that treats the dinner table as something close to sacred. That is a completely different picture from a lot of how alcohol gets consumed elsewhere. The ancient Romans called wine a gift from the gods. Modern cardiologists, when they're being precise about it, describe it as a dose-dependent variable, something that can help in small amounts and clearly stops helping past a certain point. Both descriptions are circling the same idea. Context decides everything. Used the way traditional Italian culture actually used it, sparingly, intentionally, as part of a shared meal rather than a habit on its own, it earns its place on a list like this. 20 foods. Thousands of years of continuous use. An entire culture that built its agriculture, its rituals, and its cooking around the things that kept people functioning well into old age. Here's what I want you to actually walk away with. The people living the longest in places like Sardinia and Calabria aren't doing anything complicated. They're not tracking macros. They're not cycling through supplement stacks or chasing the newest protocol. They're cooking what their grandmothers cooked with olive oil from their own trees, garlic from their own gardens, sardines pulled from the sea down the road. Modern science, with all its clinical trials and double-blind studies, keeps arriving at conclusions their grandmothers already understood without ever needing a lab coat. Olive oil calms inflammation. Garlic fights infection. Beans predict how well you'll age. Bitter greens feed the bacteria that regulate your immune system. Wild mushrooms protect the brain. The research isn't discovering anything new here. It's confirming what was already true. And one more thing before you go, because it matters. Quality is not a minor detail on this list. It's the whole point. The gap between real cold-pressed extra virgin olive oil and a cheap blend cut with something else. The gap between naturally fermented olives and the industrially processed version sitting in most supermarket jars. The gap between wild Sicilian pistachios and the bagged commercial version. These differences aren't small, and they aren't snobbery. Every single item on this list has a real version and a watered-down version, and only one of them is actually doing what centuries of Italian cooking intended it to do. Drop a comment and tell me which one of these surprised you the most. Are you team bitter greens, team fermented foods, or team ancient fats? I read every comment that comes through. And if you haven't subscribed to Recreational Roots yet, now's the moment. Hit that button, ring the bell so you don't miss what's coming next, and I'll see you in the next one.